This is Plant-Based Briefing, the ultimate guide to having a green Halloween by Lara Robertson at GoodOnYou.eco. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson, and this is the curated content plant-based podcast where I get permission and read articles to you on a variety of plant-based and vegan topics in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And with this podcast format, because I'm never interviewing anyone or talking with anyone on the podcast, it's kind of like I'm speaking out into a void. I would love to get your feedback. I see your downloads. I know that people all around the world are listening, but I'd love to have some interaction. You can find me at plantbasedbriefing.com and click the contact button. You can email me there, or you can click the button in the center top that says rate and review the podcast here, and you can leave me a review with some feedback. I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast. Are there certain topics that you'd like to hear more of or less of? Are there certain contributors you'd like me to reach out to and get their permission to share their information? Anything at all that you'd like to share with me, I would love to hear it. And what I'm going to do is start to share some of the feedback I get, just giving a shout out to some of the people that take a minute to touch base because I really do appreciate it. So one email I received was from Cocoa Bean, and they said, "What an amazing podcast. I listened to several and the content is just amazing. Your voice is so appealing, very engaging. The content is absolutely amazing. You definitely have influenced me to move towards plant-based nutrition." I love to hear stuff like that, especially the last part. I think there's so much great content out there, and I love to be able to share it and love to know that it might be having an impact, a positive impact on somebody. Now, for today's episode, I'm going to be reading from GoodOnYou.eco. They're the world's leading source for fashion brand ratings with their website and an app that they have. But they also focus on some general sustainable and environmental topics as well, which is today's post. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. The Ultimate Guide to Having a Green Halloween by Lara Robertson at GoodOnYou.eco. When we think about Halloween, ethical and sustainable practice doesn't exactly spring to mind, but the amount of waste that a single holiday can generate is mind-boggling. From flimsy, single-use costumes to plastic candy wrappers to mass-produced decorations. Halloween doesn't just have a huge impact on the environment either. It also takes a massive toll on our wallets. This year, U.S. consumers are expected to spend an all-time high of $10.14 billion on Halloween-related items, including $3.3 billion on costumes. Now that's frightening. Read on to discover how to have a green Halloween without creating a nightmare for the planet and your wallet. If you're a conscious consumer who feels guilty about the waste typically involved in this holiday, don't worry. Spooky season can still be your favorite with a few eco-friendly adjustments. Rather than buying mass-produced products that take a lot of resources to manufacture, you can invest in quality costumes and decorations or even make them yourself so that they last for years rather than just one day. Depending on where you are in the world, Halloween might still be a little different this year, but whether you're celebrating Halloween with a small number of friends or hosting a spooky online reunion, here are our top tips for having a sustainable Halloween. Halloween costumes done sustainably. The biggest carbon footprint from Halloween comes from the millions of poor-quality, fast fashion costumes that are mass-produced every year. Most are made from unsustainable materials such as polyester and conventional cotton and are manufactured in countries that have poor labor standards. Worst of all, many often don't last more than a day before they start falling apart. What is the most sustainable Halloween costume? The one you already have. Look at what's in your closet, ask friends and family if you can borrow a costume, or just reuse and update the same costume every year. Not only is it better for the environment, it's also better for your wallet. Plus, you won't have to spend hours on the internet and Pinterest looking for Halloween costume inspiration. Costume shops hire out a huge selection of amazing costumes that are better quality than any fast fashion options. You can also check out your local thrift store or vintage boutique to find some great pieces or fabrics that you can repurpose into a DIY Halloween costume. Another fun option inspired by a clothing swap is to host a costume exchange if your local authorities allow gatherings. Eco-friendly decorations. Let's start with the traditional Halloween pumpkin. We recommend buying a pumpkin from a local grower or farmer's market and carving it out to make a classic jack-o'-lantern, keeping the seeds and flesh to eat later. You can roast the seeds and make pumpkin soup or even muffins with the flesh. For Southern Hemisphere readers, pumpkins aren't in season in spring, so why not skip the imported pumpkins in the supermarket and carve out a watermelon instead? But what happens to pumpkins come November? In the United Kingdom, it's predicted that over 8 million pumpkins will be tossed into the trash after Halloween. In fact, in a report by Hubbub and Knorr, 60% of people who bought pumpkins to carve out reported they do not use the pumpkin after carving and instead throw it out. But did you know there are many ways you can recycle and reuse your pumpkin after spooky season? As mentioned earlier, you can cook with the seeds and flesh, but you can also fill your pumpkin with seeds to feed the birds or wildlife, or check with your local zoos and organizations like community gardens and animal shelters to see if they take leftover pumpkins. And if these ideas don't work for you, you can always compost your pumpkin and plant the seeds to grow your own pumpkins for next year. That's a win-win. When it comes to other decorations, why not make your own? You can use cardboard to make a skeleton or tombstones, make spiders out of black pipe cleaners, create ghosts out of old sheets, and repurpose your toilet paper rolls to make spooky and kind of adorable bats. You can even put bloody handprints on your windows using red poster paint. Still stuck? Here's a link for 42 cheap and easy ideas for DIY Halloween decorations. If you do buy decorations, ensure that they are reusable and good quality so you can use them year after year. And when it comes to candles, be sure to light up your pumpkins or watermelons with soy-based candles, not paraffin-based ones. Instead of using a plastic pumpkin bucket to hold treats in, why not use something you already have? You can use a wicker basket, a regular bucket, or even an old bag or pillowcase that you can decorate and use every year. Throwing a Halloween party? Make sure you avoid single-use plastic plates, cups, and cutlery, and use regular dishes and utensils, or opt for biodegradable or recyclable ones instead. Don't forget about second-hand options. Check out your local vintage stores or thrift shops for creepy decorations such as candelabras, lanterns, old apothecary bottles and jars, mirrors, and dolls. No cheap, mass-produced versions can beat the real thing. Sustainable Halloween treats. Some of the biggest candy manufacturers in the world, including Cadbury, Nestle, Hershey's, and Mars, have a huge impact on the environment. They massively contribute to deforestation and species extinction due to their demand for sugar, palm oil, and cocoa beans. These companies have also been found to source their cocoa from countries such as the Ivory Coast and Ghana that use child labor or slave labor to harvest cocoa beans. On top of all that, a huge amount of energy and resources go into making candy, not to mention all the non-recyclable wrapping it's all packaged up in. So why not avoid all those individually wrapped lollies and make some sweet treats yourself? Cookies always go down well with kids and adults, let's be honest, and you can decorate them to make them Halloween themed. Here's a recipe for vegan Halloween sugar cookies linked here. That would be a great option for anyone with milk, egg, or nut allergies, and of course, vegans. Some other tasty treats you could make include carob almond freezer fudge, homemade Rolo balls, or peanut butter balls, all linked here. Instead of wrapping them in plastic or cellophane, you could put them in paper bags decorated with Halloween-themed images, or just hand them straight over. They won't last long. If making your own treats is too time-consuming, there are a number of ethical alternatives to regular candy brands. Look for products with independent certifications such as USDA Organic, Ceres, Australian Certified Organic, NASAA Certified Organic, and Fair Trade. Keep in mind, however, that these certifications don't necessarily mean that the entire supply chain involved in making that candy is both socially and environmentally sound. If you do choose to buy regular candy, just limit the amount you give to each child. Buying only what you need is better for the environment and for the kids. So there you have it. With these tips, us conscious consumers don't have to miss out on all the spooky fun. Happy Green Halloween! You just listened to The Ultimate Guide to Having a Green Halloween by Lara Robertson at GoodOnYou.eco. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson, and as always, I put a link to the original post in the show notes. And from there, you can find links to the craft ideas and recipe ideas that were mentioned in the post. I'll also put a link in the show notes to PETA's 2021 Guide to Halloween Candy, that's vegan, and an article with 6 ways to use leftover pumpkins, including tips on using them to feed wildlife and things to avoid, like make sure you don't use painted pumpkins if you're leaving them for wildlife. So please share this with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.